one Valentine on Who's Views. Welcome to We Love Davros season.
Hello and welcome to Who's Views Reviews, and we're all here now to talk about proper Doctor Who, everybody. Isn't that fantastic? Yay! And indeed, welcome to the first episode in our We Love Davros season, which is not set up at all to set any messages to any particular showrunners which way whatsoever. I'm joined tonight, as you can see,
a message.
As if we would ever do that. As you can see, I am joined tonight by Paul, by Phil, by Kirsty, by Badria, and by Third Doctor Ian. Hello, everybody. Are you excited for this evening?
Very excited.
Oh, isn't this fab, everybody? This is fab. So we're going to crack on. Hello to you all. Thank you for watching the show. We're going to come to you in a few minutes, but we are here to talk about Genesis of the Daleks, that classic for many, many people. Yes, indeed. First broadcast on the BBC on the 8th of March to the 12th of April 1975, and written by Terry Nation, of course. And look at this picture. We're all known this, but there's the man himself with the creations. And of course, in this particular episode and story, he was about to give us another classic. This was, of course, directed as well by David Maloney and produced by Philip Hinchcliffe in what was his, as well as the mighty Tom Baker's first series. Oh, goodness me. So where to start with all of this going on with Genesis of the Daleks? I mean, this is one of these stories, everybody, that I absolutely remember from when I was 5 years old. This stands out on so many levels for me. And there's a particular image I'm going to get to right now, which cements this story in my memory, and it's this one. Now, this scared the life out of me. What about you lot? When did you lot first come across this?
Well, I old enough to remember on first viewing.
Yep.
Surprise, surprise. And I saw it subsequently every time it was repeated up until 82. And it's got to be the best Doctor Who story ever. And it has to be up there with I, Claudius as BBC classic drama. It has to be.
Wow. That's really good.
That's how good it is, yeah. I would say.
Yeah, that is huge, because a lot of people to this day will talk about I, Claudius all the time, but you never hear about Genesis of the Daleks with them, do you? It's a crime.
Well, you
really.
heard it here first. That's all I'm saying.
What about you, Phil? When did you first come across this? Let me know, guys, when you came across this story.
I reckon it would have been in the early 90s, and
oh my god,
my mum would have rented it on Blockbusters for me, or I have seen it on BBC Two as well. I think it was repeated on like Sundays or something.
Oh wow, yeah.
It would have been the early 90s.
Oh, you saw the same one, Badria?
Yeah, so I think it's 1992. I think BBC Two repeats on a Sunday afternoon, I think. And yeah, Genesis was one of the first stories I vividly remember seeing, along with the Sea Devils.
Oh yeah, of course. And what about Kirsty and Ian? What about you two?
I saw it. First saw it through the pandemic.
Wow.
When we were locked up at home. But yesterday I gave it a rewatch just for homework, just to refresh my mind. And it is still as good as it was the first watch.
I saw it on original transmission. So I can honestly say on that dark, scary night, I was doing exactly the same as Paul was, and watching it with absolute terror. It was incredible. And every repeat since, got the book, got the record, and it was just unbelievable television. I mean, Tom Baker by that point, he's the Doctor. I mean, I'm a Pertwee fan, as you obviously know, but my God, by that point, Pertwee was like, who was he? Tom Baker had made it his own. And you just had this story that was scary as hell right from the very start. That wasteland, the Mutos walking through it, the mist and all the rest, the carnage. And it was the perfect setup. And I agree with what Paul says. This is as good a piece of BBC drama as you will ever get. It doesn't matter that it's not a historical piece. It's just a piece of damn good TV. Brilliant writing, brilliant directing, brilliant acting, the whole 9 yards. Genesis of the Daleks has it, 100%.
I think we're going to be looking with gushing geeky admiration as this story all through this episode, everybody. Let's just say hello to everyone in the chat, guys. I just want to say hello and welcome to Lex K, and I put his reaction up there, who says, great to have true Doctor Who fans. You're very welcome to Who's Views. Thank you very much for joining us. Sadeko24 is here. Hello to you. Nice to see you. Pete is here with us all, saying hello to Pete. And here's Digby saying evening, lovely people in the chat. Never mind us. All right. Hi, Digby. How are you? Here's Tony. Hi all, a brilliant six-parter. It is, isn't it? Sam is with us. Hello, Sam. Nice to see you. We're saying good evening to everybody there. We've got Garbage. Hiya, Garbage. Nice to see you. Thanks for being in the chat for us. That's great to see you there. And we've got Raymond Williams here saying, where is he? There he is, saying hello and hail. Thanks. Nice to see you, Raymond. Blue Captain Jack is with us. Gosh, you're all here tonight. Thanks for joining us. And TARDIS Travels is with us as well. And strangely, this is a story where the TARDIS isn't involved in it at all, is it? We've got Mark here. Hiya, Mark. Nice to see you all the way over there from the lovely Emerald Isle. And George. Hiya, George. Glad you're feeling better. It's good to see you, George. Nice. Thanks for joining us. Oh, thanks, Digby. Great to see that. Right, 1975, says Sadeko. Great days for the show. Now, Ian, you actually mentioned this as well, didn't you? Because this is Tom's first season. And by the time he gets into Genesis, you have forgotten the white-haired guy that came before him because he's so in his stride. I mean, we talked about this during our season, but we've got to talk about it again here because this is, you know, as Sadeko's in here, a real impact. Absolutely, isn't it?
Yeah, he'd done that by Ark in Space, though, hadn't he? He genuinely hit the ground running. And by the end of Robot, you were just enthralled by him. Ark in Space just cemented it. And from that point, he was just cruising. And yeah. Superb.
It's interesting, this story, because it's not an atypical Tom performance. He's deadly straight. There are very few gags in this, quite a grim story. And Tom's not, he's got a couple of little funny bits in it, but generally he's really straight. And it's a really grim story, which there's not many laughs in it, but it's a fantastic performance from Tom, definitely.
And he seems to understand, even though, you know, the show is actually, when you look at the bigger scale thing, the show is still in its infancy. But he seems to understand the importance of the Daleks to the Doctor. And I remember as a 5-year-old being terrified because of these stories. A, because Sarah always seemed to be in trouble. And as we all know, Sarah was my girl, you know, and she always seemed to be in some sort of trouble. Davros himself scared the hell out of me. I've never seen anything like that in my life as a 5-year-old back then. That face, as I say, and because that picture showed as well, he was in the shadows when he was first introduced, and then you get the cliffhanger on the end of it. That will stay with me for life, for whatever reason. It's probably one of the things that cemented my love for this show because it scared the hell out of me. Who viewers? It really,
the lighting in this story is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is fantastic. It's so dark, but yeah.
Well,
it's dark in the way that you can't see stuff. You can still see what's happening, but it's still, you know, the overall impression is it's dark.
Yeah. Raymond Six was here, guys. Great story by Terry Nation, but it's the production team of Holmes and Hinchcliffe that raises it above all the rest of the Dalek stories. Holmes' fingerprints are all over it. Now, we do have to say there that, of course, let's give him a shout out. The script editor for this was, of course, Robert Holmes. And it's also, it's worth mentioning as well that, of course, they inherited this story. This story was actually commissioned by the outgoing producer, Barry Letts. And there's a whole story around that as well, isn't there, guys?
Yeah, after Terry Nation rewrote the story 3 times before, and they wanted something else instead, it was original.
And they were quite right to point it out, because apparently he rehashed Planet of the Daleks and Death to the Daleks and sold it back to the BBC. And Barry actually said, why don't you try something different? And it was Barry Letts that suggested, apparently, go back to the origin, which really got Terry Nation's creative side going. And that's why we got this fantastic classic. Says Pete, hide your eyes here, please, Ian. Dalek, Cybermen, Centaurans, wow, what a season. But Tom was the business. John Who.
He's right, though. It's right.
He is. I'm a
By
big
that
John
point-
Pertwee fan myself, but I agree. No disrespect to Ian, but yeah, fantastic stuff from Tom.
Yeah, definitely. Digby's is saying to us, Genesis is possibly the best bit of drama the Bee produced as both sci-fi and historical allegory. It teaches you everything you need to know about the moral dangers posed by totalitarian. And you know what? The thing about this, Digby, is that the older you get, and when you watch it again, as I'll speak for myself, when I watched this again for this show and enjoyed every single second of it, you really see more. And that's happened to me every time I've seen this, guys, over the many, many years. As I get older, I see more coming through all the time. Do you know what I mean?
I did a similar thing to Kirsty, and I rewatched it this week, and I forgot how good it is, to be honest. Because in my head, I kind of think it's a six-parter, and it gets a bit boring in places. But really, Genesis doesn't. It doesn't actually get boring. I don't want a country drop. I was sitting in an airport, and I was watching it on my phone, and I didn't realise that nearly everyone else had left the room and was like already sort of boarding to get on the flight.
No way.
You didn't miss your flight then.
Nearly, but I was just wrapped in it because it is such a great story.
Yeah.
And there's so much going on.
I see it. I'm like that as well. I see it a point of view when it comes to Doctor Who, but especially any sci-fi show, when it's always, you're meeting like the big classes, like the big bad. I'm always like, here we go, boys, it's going to be a good one. And this one is, again, second time round, you're like, oh, let's get at it, let's get on it. But what that comment said, I totally understand with how the themes are really dark, and it does. I was having some trolls were coming at me because I was like, oh, like Doctor Who made you think? Because I don't know about you guys, but maybe when you watch the episodes, sometimes in situations like that, you'll be like, right, so the Doctor's going to do this. What would I do in this situation? And I was getting slated like, no, you can't think like that. That's not that idea. Do you guys think that as well when you watch big, juicy episodes like this? Like, how would I handle that situation? Or is that just me?
It's just you.
So I haven't, but now you've said it, I probably will.
Well, this story, of course, and we'll get to it, of course, has one of the biggest moral dilemmas in Doctor Who's history, and it's beautifully done, so we will get to that. And that's the one that really makes you think. But yeah, I know what you mean in this particular story. I think from my point of view, as a 5-year-old, all I was worried about was the Doctor, Sarah, and Harry being very, very frightened and very scary about Davros and the way he was wading around, really, and, trundling around, that voice that Michael Wisher puts on there. So I've never thought of it necessarily how I would do. How would I react? But I probably would now. I agree with Phil there. Next time I look at it, I think, what would I do in this situation apart from slap myself? I don't know.
Yeah.
In terms of rewatching it again for research, like I have to watch it again, like I don't remember it. But I watched it again. I hadn't seen it for about 5 years since the season 12 Blu-ray came out, and I said to myself, I'll sit down and watch it. I'll maybe watch an episode or two a night. And then I sat down, watched part one. 2 hours, 30 minutes later, it finished. And I thought, my God, that was wonderful. I really enjoyed it.
That's the mark of good television, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really, really is. When you can see, when you just, when you get engrossed like that, when it brings you in like that, that's what you want. That's what's called entertainment, people in show business today. Digby here is telling us, Davros was a brilliant creation. Sadly, I think he became overused in the 80s. Digby, come back to us next weekend with that thought as well, because obviously next weekend we're going to have the big We Love Davros debate, the big discussion there. So tell us about that more next week. And Paul is saying to us, hiya, Paul, this serves as a note to recent and current producers. This is how you make alterations to established Doctor Who lore with quality and with respect. So that's actually an interesting point here, isn't it? Because this does build on what we know about Doctor Who and the Daleks at that particular point. This gives them a creator. So this was again ahead of its time for Doctor Who, wasn't it?
It also rewrites Dalek history, which must have been, the fans must have been up in arms at that point, were they?
You mean the Metal City and stuff?
Well, in terms of the plot from the Dead Planet, the Daleks, then that's completely different history they have to what they have in Genesis. The story's completely different. So that's a retcon in 1975.
Yeah. Or could the Daleks be way in the future?
Or they could be. They could be.
Yeah.
But you do get some of the history from the story in the Daleks relating to what happened in the Thal-Khalid War and all that kind of stuff, but they're not called Thals, the Dals, but the Khals were called Dals, etc., etc. Lots of different contradictions, but that's Doctor Who.
Yeah, but this had such an impact that every Dalek story after it, to this very day, has followed on.
Mm.
You know, and that's the whole thing about this story, isn't it? This is the one that really sets up the whole of the Dalek history, and also, of course, Davros's history. Because for Davros, every time we see him now, it's a continuation of the Genesis story, because it's that part, another part after that particular point. And yet they didn't know anything like was going to happen. You have to give their credit. They were brilliant. They didn't know what they were actually doing with this, did they? They were just churning out a story to get it on the telly to make sure the color card wasn't put on. And here we go with this massive, iconic story, which is true to say nothing was ever the same again after this.
No, the impact is amazing, because it's not just, the repeats. It's probably the most repeated story there's been. Because it's always a good one for drawing in viewers. Some point to it has been the start of the Time War. Whenever they BBC Studios.
Well, I think RTD himself said that, didn't he?
Yeah.
When the Daleks found out that the Time Lords had sent the Doctor back, that's a fan geeky thing for you, isn't it? That's
Yeah.
But then you also have, I think, the Sorcerer's Apprentice and the Magician's, whatever, the Stephen Moffat's
Magician's Apprentice.
Yeah, I mean that's just an ode to Genesis, basically.
Yeah. Well, it was, wasn't it? Yeah, but yeah. Blue Captain Jack, hi, Cybermatch Straps. Blue Captain Jack is saying, I wish I'd seen it in 1975. Family were not letting me watch Who every Saturday, but I have caught up with it, and it's something we'd never see today. Well, you won't get that sort of storytelling, because it's actually quite slow when you look at it. Even though we're saying, you get engaged with it and you don't realize it is very slow, because that's how it was done back in the day, isn't it? It actually, instead of wham, bam, slap, 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 and giving you all within 40 minutes or whatever nonsense they do today, it's actually explaining it. There's definitely a beginning, middle, and end in this one. And it's not a 4-parter with a related 2-part click on the end, like the Seat of Doom or something like that,
What is interesting about it, I think, even it is older television, what for me keeps me engaged is the quality of the performances of the actors in it. They're taking it so seriously, and it's beautifully played by everyone in the cast. It's such a great, strong cast. Yeah,
absolutely. I want to say hi to Gary Bryant, who's saying, if the story is compelling and the acting excellent, then small continuity errors can be forgiven.
Mm-hmm.
I think as fans we overlook certain things, because that raged through all through 26 years of Doctor Who, really, wasn't it? Where there were slight contradictions, the Great Fire of London or whatever, and we overlooked it. Unit dating being the big one, absolutely. Kirsty's saying here, if you don't like the like button, Davros will get you. Now, if you'd said to me that, Kirsty, when I was 5 or 6, I would have probably burst out into tears, because he was bloody frightening. God, yeah. Let's get straight to the man. Well, actually, before we do that, I want to just show you these now. You're saying in the chat as well, guys, thanks very much for joining us and for all your comments. You're saying in the chat that this must be one of the most repeated Doctor Who's ever. It has to be. And it's been repeated in so many different formats now. And I remember that the one that was shown around about Christmas time. Do you guys remember that? The omnibus edition. Yeah. The Radio Time, we've got this slide for it as well, actually. Who remembers this?
Oh
wow.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, for a load of us, Kirsty, that picture screamed Doctor Who. And when you saw something like that with this picture, this slide coming onto BBC One, I think most of us would have wet ourselves going,
it's coming.
Yeah, that was just, let's look at it again. I mean, that is just Doctor Who. All in one picture and one caption there, isn't it? That's it there. But I found some slides from the Radio Times from over the years as well. So look at these. Again, these are gorgeous pictures here.
Oh, fantastic.
I mean, forgive the quality, but they are old. And look at this. Isn't this brilliant? And look at that picture of Terry Nation with Tom. That whole photo shoot must have been a scream for those two. Because it really did well. And of course, there's some. This is from this one here. Iconic Frank Bellamy art. Absolutely stunning. And that's from the repeat, as you can see there. A complete Doctor Who adventure, 3 p.m. in the afternoon. Who remembers that one?
I remember that, definitely. That's the
Yeah.
Christmas one, wasn't it? Yeah.
That was the one I remember as well.
Yeah.
And you know what? At that age, I don't even remember bits being taken out because all the important elements were somehow by Philip Hinchcliffe left in the show.
I think there's omnibus versions on the season 12 box set, isn't it? I think the edited version. Yeah,
I think so. Peter Saint was here. Look, the clamps reminded me of oysters off the ice cream van. I remember those as well. Yeah. Remember, Pete, do you remember when you went to the ice cream van? They used to have the picture of all the ice creams and the lollies you could get on the van. Do you remember? And when you saw that picture of the oyster, did you look twice as well, or was it just me? You know, the thing's going to get you, poor Harry. Megan really chewed off.
Giving me Seaside, a little shop of horrors as well.
Yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely. Tony is saying to us, bath, pajamas, Doctor Who, summertime special, the Gen game. Used to love Saturday night TV as a kid. It's nothing but crap now.
Apart from Gladiators, Tony.
Yeah,
I was Digby is also saying 1982 was the broadcast that he saw. Sadly, it takes out the episode 1 cliffhanger. Yes. But when you see that, when you actually saw that, Digby, when you actually saw the episode 1 cliffhanger, did you go, did it actually get you? Because I still think it stands out as one of the best cliffhangers in Doctor Who history today. What's amazing, says Cybermat Strikes, is that they delivered a very satisfying origin story for the established monster. Not all creative teams can pull that off. I love our Who viewers because they're all subtle.
They're very subtle, yeah, which is good.
Yeah, I will.
Yes.
Go on, Kirsty.
Go on, Ian.
Oh, sorry, but I think JT, you'd said it earlier. The show was still in the early days. Really, it was 12 years old.
12, yeah.
And then if you take the new series, and when that was 12 years old, it was 2017. Look what each side was turning out.
Oh, yeah. And Digby's just saying it's the Blu-ray release of season 12 has the Christmas omnibus. Yeah. Gary also remembers Tom hanging off the railings with the Daleks promo pics. That was really, I mean, I've got this one from that because there's actually quite a lot. So I've shown this one just before, but that's from that photo shoot there, which was announcing the Daleks coming back. At that point, though, I don't think that would have shocked many people because they've been in it for quite a bit by that point, hadn't they, everyone?
Yeah, every year since Day of the Daleks, since 72.
Yeah. So there must have been a whole set of youngsters that had grown up through Pertwee's time that were blown away by this story, I would hope, because it's so different. And the Daleks themselves are so different in it, aren't they? Because they're hardly in it until the very end, where they just suddenly come and go bang.
I think out of 6 parts, I think they're for 15 minutes if they're lucky, I think. Yeah.
It's that gunmetal grey and black, which I think is the best colour scheme.
Yeah.
None of this bronze, just they look like proper killing machines.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I love, you know how they're so kind of like, they're just subservient. They're just, Davros is pressing buttons and they do stuff until the very end when they turn on Davros. And then it just looks at the camera and it's like, oh, we're going to become the supreme being. And it's just fantastic because they're not the baddie until the end.
It's the perfect,
it's true, isn't it?
Yeah. It's the perfect example of the creation destroying its creator,
Yeah.
That goes back to Frankenstein and, his monster. It's just the perfect end, and that really should have been where Davros ended, to be honest. But so much more to tell with that character. So see why he came back.
Yeah, I think in terms of the Dalek colours, the grey, I think because metallic grey works really, really well in the kind of sort of German kind of side of the story. The Daleks being like the Nazis, etc., all that kind of stuff. But I think it's the best I've ever looked in grey because they used metallic paint rather than matte paint later on, and it looked a bit battered, etc. That's the best way they looked in grey for me in Genesis, I think.
Yeah, I have to say these Daleks, because they were probably the first I remember as a 5-year-old, are my Daleks. I love those colour schemes, but also, again, as a 5-year-old, I was getting... Did you guys get thrills down your back when you were kids when something exciting or scary was happening in Doctor Who?
Yeah.
I got that when the Daleks were around. I mean, Davros just scared me silly, as I say. Absolutely awful, absolutely horrible. But the Daleks themselves. But I think it's not just the color scheme of the Daleks. It's just that those Daleks, because of that, fit into the set. Because you've got the Khalid city, all that gorgeous BBC metallic wall type thing.
Yeah.
You know, they've really gone to work with all that tinfoil, which screams BBC 1974-75 for me. I think it's beautiful. But they also work in the alternative one, in the Thals.
Yeah, yeah.
And they really stand out. And these are terrifying, these. I don't understand why they've ever gone to that bronze nonsense. Look at this. They're absolutely beautiful.
I think also Dudley's music helps
Oh.
the Daleks so much. That Dalek march or Dalek trundle music he adds is fantastic. It is.
Do any of you go around Tesco or Sainsbury's or wherever you go to with a trolley going ding, 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 ding? Or is it
No,
just
that's
me?
just you.
Is that just me?
That's just
Any- Anybody in the chat? Because it's been there all that time. That Dudley's music has made such an impression on me since that time. That's what I've been doing for all these years with my trolley, pretending I'm a Genesis Dalek. Okay. Well, good night, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Just therapy for you, JT.
Gary Bryan said the Daleks' appearance time is quality, not quantity, because they are compelling when on screen, aren't they? Just they
That's
really,
the best
really
way to put it.
Yeah. The Khalid Elite are a very clear metaphor for the yes, they are. I don't know if we're allowed to say that. I'm so paranoid after this week about what we can say and what we can't say. Cybermatch Strikes is saying, I think less Daleks is always more impactful. Lurking around in a theatre of war, killing people is fantastic. Absolutely. And Digby, the look of the Daleks in Genesis makes them look like a piece of WWII hardware. They have that look. And that's the thing, what resonated with everybody at the time, didn't it? Because I think some of the older people, parents, the grandparents would have remembered the war. Let's face it. So these tanks, that's part of why the Daleks surely were popular, because they were tanks, weren't they?
Yeah. Here's a question that one of you will be able to answer. You know, I can't remember his name. Like the Khalid scientist dude who goes on to be, is it Gruber in Hello, Hello?
Guy Steiner.
That's him, yeah, Guy Steiner.
Yeah.
Had he been Gruber in Hello, Hello at that point?
No,
it's much later.
Right,
Yes,
because you see,
mostly.
when I see him, I associate him with, my little tank and all of that.
It's because you saw it in reverse. You saw Lolo first, then Genesis, did you?
Yeah. Because everyone used to watch Hello, Hello, didn't they?
Ah.
That was just a question. I was jarring.
Yeah, I wonder when Guy got the role in Hello, Hello, he saw the ability to say, I played this sort of role before, but this time I can be very camp and send it up. I don't know.
Well, maybe he got it because of Genesis.
I was
Maybe they were
thinking that,
thinking up
yeah.
Hello, Hello, and they were like, we need him. We need that card.
Well, there's two of them. There's another actor who's he's one of the Thals that holds Sarah over the scaffold by the rocket and holds her up, and she screams. He's in Hello, Hello as well. He's another German officer, and he's in Planet of the Daleks. I've forgotten his name, but he's in Hello, Hello as well.
Okay, I'm going to have to go back.
Yeah.
You mentioned Sarah on the scaffold. That I mean, it's a ploy that David Maloney used a few times, but the still image as your cliffhanger, that stuck with me. So I think it was Sidako 25 who corrected us by saying it was a Friday afternoon. Friday evening in
Friday evenings in 1992, I think, wasn't it?
93. Yeah, and but that image stuck in my head, and it was terrifying because I thought, Sarah's a goner here.
How old were you at that point?
At that point, I would have been 6.
Oh right, okay, yes, so similar age to me because I was exactly the same.
6, 7.
Yeah, so I was 5, as I said, and I remembered the feeling of absolute horror when that freeze frame with Sarah happened because my girl was, and I couldn't see anywhere. And I remember my dad having to say, she's going to be okay. She's going to be all right. The doctor won't let anything happen to Sarah. She's going to be fine because I was absolutely distraught.
To be fair, though, that fog would have killed anyone probably, but we'll let that pass.
Well, it could have been all the way down.
We don't know. She's fallen.
Well, when you see the height of it, it's like when you see superheroes or people in superhero movies who get knocked over and they're fine to get up again. It's a bit like that.
Yeah.
But I'll let it pass because it's a great moment. But
look out for this. Thank you for that, Cybermatch Strikes. Thank you very much. Yes, because my trolley goes around very fast, I tell you. And Gary is saying Tesco security guard here is actually a Nyder lookalike. Really? Oh, really? Oh, that's a bit worrying, isn't it? Let's get on to the cast now, and we'll talk about. This is the We Love Davros season, so let's talk about the man that originated this role and brought this to life. Because behind this fantastic mask that was built by John Friedlander, who, of course, Doctor Who fans, we know the name. He was responsible for some of the best designs of monsters at that time, wasn't he, guys? He did some of the best mask work in television history. I'm not being dramatic there. When you look at his work, spot on beautiful. It's perfect. Absolutely perfect. And this was the latest one, the Davros mask, which scared kids, not just me, all over the country for 6 beautiful weeks. This was just absolutely thrilling. And who can remember that cliffhanger end where, you know, this creature is revealed, that voice, the movement, absolutely everything. And we have to big up here Mr. Michael Wisher, the man behind the character. What a legendary performance, not just in Doctor Who, but I'm going to go forward to say in science fiction. What do you guys think?
Yeah, it's
He's
like
a giant, really. Yeah.
And
Really,
like the
really.
appearance of him, you know, like you see him and he's sat there in his chair and you think, why is his face all like that? Why has he got 3 eyes? Why has he got that metal around his head? Why is he half Dalek? Why has he only got 1 arm? And we still don't know. I mean, obviously there are like big finishes and stuff, but
yeah. The interesting thing about it is, and this is for Russell if he's watching, Davros created the Daleks in his own image. Bear that in mind. Otherwise, the Daleks don't work if he doesn't create them in his own image, does it?
Yeah.
No.
The whole point of this performance, though, from Michael Wisher, Badria, is at the very beginning, you just think, when you get over the shock, when you see Davros for the first time, because nothing like this has obviously been seen in Doctor Who, but you automatically notice the base. Now, he's in a Dalek base, for crying out loud, so you know where this is going.
Yeah.
You really know where this is going. And when he starts talking about his creative, but what Michael Wisher brings to this so beautifully is an ability to go from the very considered scientist to a raving megalomaniac lunatic. It's incredibly powerful.
It's a multi-layered performance by Michael Wisher, and I can't see anyone else at that point doing it. Anyone else doing it at that point? But allegedly, Roy Skelton was considered to be Davros because he did a Dalek voice.
Well, yeah, we'll come to. I want to talk about Roy's Dalek voices in a second with this, but that's interesting because I didn't know that. But that would have been a different performance.
Yeah.
Go on, Bedouin.
What wasn't Michael Wisher Dalek voice in Death to the Daleks? The previous year. So, and obviously there's the infamous sort of rehearsal story of Wisher running his lines with a brown paper bag over his head so he could get used to being inside, and that ability to convey a performance through a mask. You know, not everyone's got it. It's very challenging to be stuck inside a mask which is basically stuck to his face for hours and hours at a time and deliver that performance. And as you say, JT, it's that balance of, when he's talking to his other scientists and colleagues, he's very measured and very calculated. And then towards the end where everything starts to go to his head a little bit, he's gone totally tonto. He goes for it.
Well, when the Daleks turn him at the end of the story, his reaction's wonderful. That almost disbelief that they've turned on him. That's a fantastic moment.
I love at the beginning when you first meet him in the shadows as well, and it's just the way he delivers exterminate. You kind of go, oh, maybe something is maybe a bit of a screw loose there, that you are going to become that megalomaniac. It is just beautiful. The chat are saying that as well, just the range of his voice, as we're saying, from as well going just crazy to just soft, but that kind of soft going, ooh, that's a problem. And yeah, that is Davros, and I will die on that hill.
No, that's fine. George is actually saying to us here, Mike Wisher wasn't the first choice to play Davros. He got it when the first actor backed out because he didn't like the idea of the heavy makeup or mask. Mike was already booked to provide the Dalek voices, and it's not a leap of the imagination to say go from a voice to this particular role, is it? Because he's got that, you can actually hear again in the performance. He's bringing that element in, isn't he? Isn't he? In
he is, but I mean, like Kirsty touched on, he brings in an immense range, because you have that the very first scenes, it's almost a whisper, but then he barks out that command of exterminate. When he's turning on the Khaleds and he's in the Thal Dome, he's talking as if he's a great statesman, politician that only wants peace, and he's oozing sincerity, and no price is too great to pay for peace. I just ask, and all this kind of thing. But he's plotting all the time, and then you get that descent into absolute mania. But at the very, very end, like Bedouin said, you get that fear. He conveys real fear. He is terrified of what he's created and what he's turned on other people, because it's now turned on him. The range of emotions that Michael Wisher gives in that role is just unreal.
The bit that's really wonderful.
I can't think of anybody else. No, sorry.
What's really wonderful about Michael Wisher's bit, when he is scheming and he's putting on this, we're really, really nice, honestly. But then when he admits that when they killed, before they killed Ronson, and he thinks about who has given the Thals the formula and pretends it wasn't anything to do with him and Nyder, is brilliant. And they blame Ronson, and then the Daleks come out and kill him. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, again, it shows you the complexity of Davros, because this is where watching it again now, you can actually see. I think he's always power mad, but there is an insanity, and I think the Doctor highlights it brilliantly, doesn't he? There's a perpetual desire, and that actually drives him after a stage. That's what's keeping him alive. It's not just the life support system he's designed for himself and popped himself into. It's his desire to see the Daleks become the supreme power of the universe, which he's all raging about. Now, that is deeply, deeply concerning, isn't it, really? Because, it's not going to stop him. Death doesn't even stop Davros from getting on this one. That all comes through, I think, from Wisher's beautiful performance.
It's kind of performance that should have got a BAFTA or something.
Definitely.
Because let's face it, some of the people that get these awards these days, they are not a patch on what Michael Wisher did there. The fact that there was no awards for acting for stuff like that, probably because it was a little bit niche and looked down on, is unforgivable. Absolutely unforgivable.
Well, it is, isn't it? Because so much talent worked on Doctor Who in those 26 years. And of course, it wasn't proper telly for them, all these potential showbiz types, was it? It was just kids' TV. It was a write-off. And yet, look at all the talent. Some of them went on to win Oscars, for crying out loud. Yeah. And I totally agree. Freilander should have won awards. They should have won BAFTAs. A load of these people should. Some of the writing should have done. Simon Matt strikes saying he still prefers the Freilander Wisher version Davros mask and performance. You could watch the nuanced performance endlessly. And Gary's telling us, trouble is when I watch Michael and other stuff, I then have to listen to my Genesis CD. I mean, that's the other thing about Genesis of the Daleks, wasn't it? It was such a strong story that not only did we get it on eventually through the repeats, then on VHS, then on DVD and on Blu-ray, but we did get the vinyl that's behind me there. And of course, cheap plug coming up now. If you want to hear about our review of the Genesis of the Daleks vinyl from all those years ago, it's on the Sound of Who's It playlist. Paul and I get to look at that and geek out over that.
It's very good.
Yeah, and we love it as well. But it's also one of those things where you can actually say to somebody, what Doctor Who story would you start off with? You could go to, say, Genesis as an example here, couldn't you?
I think, wasn't Genesis originally, for a while, fan favourite #1 Doctor Who story, then got knocked off by Caves Van Jazani? I think Caves is a great story, but I think Genesis tops it for me, I think.
Yeah.
It's interesting that both those stories have issues with monsters. So in Caves, it's the magma creature, and in Genesis, it's clams. But in both situations, the directors are smart enough to drop the lights, so you don't really see it too much, and you move on from it really quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how
Paul
you do Doctor Who.
Well, yeah, it is. Paul's saying to us here, I can imagine when Michael Wisher first pedalled himself onto set. I imagine he would have been quite an impressive sight. Classic, chilling, and iconic, unforgettable. It must have been wonderful for the actors there, for Tom and Liz and everybody else that had to play alongside this. Dennis Chinnery, of course, plays Garman, and he gets a lot to do with that. And we'll come to Peter Miles, I'm sure, as Nyder. And Digby's also saying, Michael Wisher was a great actor and Davros was compelling. He's someone who is a genius, but a deeply flawed and wounded one. He's evil, but at some level, tragic. Oh, that's deep, but very true, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, what do you guys think about that? That's a really good one, Digby. Thank you for that.
I think there's a bit at the end, you know, when the Daleks have, like, they're turning on him, where he tries to protect those other scientists, and he goes, "Oh no, they can be useful. They can help you." And it's like, well, suddenly you're trying to. You know, you've let all of your people be nuked by the Thals.
Yeah.
But suddenly you care about these 4 people or whoever they are. And yeah, that kind of shows a bit of humanity, for want of a better word. Well,
he does cry out, doesn't he? Have pity. And then the Dalek says, "Pity? What? What were you talking about, you nonsense?" Bang.
Yeah.
But you would have thought that would have had some sort of implication on Davros later on in his life. But it didn't. He seemed to have forgotten that little bit, didn't he? Because he's just completely going off his head.
I love the way that builds up when they realise the Daleks are going to turn on them. And he says, "Nyder," and Nyder goes to press the button, and they get him immediately. And the tension just builds up and up and up. It's fantastic.
Yeah. I think we're all agreed here, though, of course, that Michael Wisher's performance, absolutely stunning. And really makes Davros. But I want to say at this point, Gary's in the chat. Gary B, thank you so much for the idea. Now, thanks to Gary, in our community tab now here on the channel, we're running a poll. And that poll is very simply, vote for your favourite Davros. There have been 4 actors playing Davros, as you are well aware. And we want to know for next Sunday's show, who's your favourite? Are you going to be voting for Michael Wisher, David Goodison, Terry Malloy, or Julian Bleach? There's the 4 of them there. Which one is your favourite Davros? Go over to the community tab here on the channel and vote and let us know. And then next week in our We Love Davros show, we will be unveiling the winner. Phil is not biased at all. I can tell you that before the show, we've had over 100 votes. Voted already. We've had over 100 votes. I can tell you at the moment that Michael Wisher is absolutely far out in the lead. So there you go. And he only did 1 story. Yeah. This is his story.
Amazing.
He's really put his mark on it, but it's a great performance. But we see in other things in Doctor Who, it's hard to not think of Davros all the time. He's in Planet of Evil and Revenge of the Cybermen, and you hear Davros coming through because you know he's Davros. It's such a strong performance.
Yeah. Oh, it's just, I'm so glad that we're talking about this, because this was the obvious place to start, actually. We start with the beginning. We are going to go through to other things as well as part of We Love Davros. So let's have a look. George is saying to us here, Michael Wisher as Davros is one of the greatest performances in all of Who and British television. And it's just a shame not more people know about it, isn't it, George? Because he absolutely nailed this. And when you look at it now, you appreciate the fact, because we all know about things now, you appreciate the fact he's encased behind that blooming latex mask. He's got the use of one hand only, and he's trundling that blooming set thing, that piece around him, which mustn't have been easy, but he's doing it beautifully. And all the time, it is a considered performance. It's the voice that gets me as well. Do you know, and somebody mentioned it in the chat earlier, that one point where he's considering and he's just tapping that evil pointy fingernail. Oh, I'm going now. Yeah. It's vile, isn't it? It's vile. Hi there, says this person. Spielcab von Sparta. Just yesterday, I've rewatched Genesis of the Daleks. Welcome to Who's Views. It's nice to see you. Welcome to the chat. Hope you're enjoying it. And yeah, I think I watched it yesterday as well, and it was a joy. So thank you for coming to let us know more about what you think about this. And Glenn's here saying hello to Kirsty, not the rest of us. Oh, yes, he is. Good evening, everyone. Hi, Glenn. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining us here. What else stands out for you guys when it comes to this story? So obviously we're going to keep coming back to the Davros element, but what else about this story? It makes it that instant favorite for you.
Peter Miles is brilliant in this.
Yeah.
An interesting fact, if you watch the documentary, that in the evenings, Nyder's a jazz singer, which puts a different side to him, I have to say. But he's fantastic in this. when he has to smile, and Nyder can't smile very well, but it's really he's so slimy when he smiles at Garmin and the Pete and the Thals and stuff like that. It's fantastic stuff. He is superb in this, and him and Michael Wish are a great double act, and they're superb.
There is that partnership going on here. Do you think this is Holmes's element more than Nation's?
It might be, yeah.
Possibly, but I think a lot is you don't know what's gone on in rehearsals. Those two actors will have realised what their roles are and how they fit into the story, and then they may have had a conversation about how they play it and how they bounce off each other. But you see Nyder's, I won't call it slavish obedience to Davros. He obviously worships Davros.
For loyalty.
But you see, when he clocks that Davros is going to have all the traitors killed, he just looks at Davros and says, "You'd go that far?" As if he's just realizing quite how far Davros would push it. But then he's on board. He's completely on board with it.
But I think he's always been there. Because remember, that's a brilliant scene between the two of them, Ian, because as you're saying there, you'd go that far. And Davros just very, very beautifully, by Wisher again, did you doubt it? No. Yeah. I mean, these two are, they're really, really evil, aren't they? I mean, there's that scene as well where the Daleks are exterminating the scientists and the elite, and he's just there smiling.
He's loving it, yeah. The bit where he cons Garmin into telling him who the people are on his side to overthrow Davros, that's really scary.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking Tenko here, aren't we? Really? I mean, this is up there with that as well, isn't it? I mean, you mentioned I Claudius, but I think it's up there with that. Had this been on before the Tenko series as well, there would have been some similarities between the two. But it's just absolutely incredible.
This is not children's television by any means.
No, but we know as well, don't we, guys, that Philip Hinchcliffe didn't actually want it to be children's television. So I'm wondering when they got this script, and do any of you guys know? I can't remember if Hinchcliffe or Robert Holmes actually said they beefed it up a little bit to make it more Hinchcliffe-y, because it definitely is, isn't it?
Yeah.
A Barry Letts version of Genesis would be fascinating, because I don't think it would have been quite as dark.
Not a chance.
So if Barry Letts and Terence had stayed on for another year and had this script, I'd love to compare the two, but there's no way it could have been as dark and as gritty and as kind of brutal, and which is what the story needed. So it was perfect time with Hinchcliffe coming in and wanting to take it in a new direction and make it darker, make it more scary, make it more horrific. And the evidence speaks for itself. As Paul said, top story.
It's interesting. It's interesting watching this and Planet of the Daleks, because they're directed by the same director, David Maloney, and he shoots the Daleks very differently in this to Planet. And it may be because the jungle set in Planet isn't as convincing as it might be, but the interior shots of the Daleks going across the battlefield with the lights and stuff, and they're all the Thals in the trenches looking up, and you see the Daleks going past with that fantastic lighting. It's amazing, really beautifully shot.
It is, like, the shadows on the wall and stuff like that, which you couldn't have done in the jungle.
And that's what made it magic, I think, for a certain age group. I think that's also why it was memorable, because every frame more or less scares you, because the atmosphere that is set up through the entire production team and captured beautifully by Maloney makes an impact. And, to the point where we're talking about it all these years later, and we're remembering the feelings that we had as kids or young people, whatever. I want to mention as well, of course, that this wasn't without criticism. Episode 1, straight into the fray with Mary Whitehouse and others, because that first scene, in case you don't know, who viewers, you probably do, was actually written by David Maloney, because he wanted more of an impact to the opening episode, didn't he? But it's interesting that scene, of course, was cut from the omnibus editions. That scene where you see all the thousand being gunned down, so atmospheric, so setting the scene. It
really sets the scene. Yeah, really does. Yeah.
We've just come into something here as a viewer, and for a Doctor Who episode at that point, it actually does make you feel that you are the visitor. You've just arrived with the Doctor, and then, of course, if you're like me, you start to get frightened about, well, where do Harry and Sarah and the Doctor come into this, and what's going to happen to Sarah?
Well, when the Time Lord arrives, I'm glad it's called Genesis of the Daleks, because the Time Lord spoils the entire plot of the story when he arrives.
Go on, explain that.
Well, he says, well, they want the Doctor to go to Skaro and avert the creation of the Daleks. He just tells the entire plot.
Well, that's what we call plot exposition, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot of spoilers, isn't it, really? It's called Genesis. If it wasn't called Genesis of the Daleks, and it was a surprise that the Daleks were in it, that would have been fantastic as well.
Yeah, and don't forget, Doctor, don't lose this time ring.
Yeah.
And you just know at some point he's going to. It's great. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. Oh, I don't know. I love all that whole setup though, and the Doctor's and Tom's performance when he realizes he's on Skaro. There's a little bit of sort of what isn't there? It's as though he's on.
I love it when he's having a bit of a tantrum. No, I'm not going to do it. I'm not doing it. Daleks, what? Daleks, what? Yeah, fantastic. Yeah.
Tony's here saying proper actors, now but straight to video Hallmark movies acting now, wouldn't to say the least. Well, you know my opinion on that. And Glenn is saying Davros always felt like the Doctor's equal as well. He came across so clever. So when Genesis aired, you thought to yourself, how is the Doctor going to beat this evil, remorseless being? That's true, isn't it? Absolutely true. Mark is also saying to us, as evil as Davros looked, it's his voice that was truly frightening. Now that is Michael Wish's talent, because with that voice, as we're saying, that comes through on the audio versions of this story. Because the way he talks as Davros, those nights when I was a kid, when I was playing Genesis of the Daleks nightly, trying to get to sleep, what an idiot.
It's not going to help you get to sleep. Wow.
Under the duvet going checking into the bed, fabulous stuff. That's what Doctor Who should be. They don't do it these days, but it should be, shouldn't it? It should be scary. Doug is saying, what do you think? Should it be scary, Who viewers? Davros is a perfect example of a villain who thinks he's the good guy. Great point. What do you think of that, guys?
Yep.
He's doing what he thinks is right.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Preserving the future of his race.
I mean, we don't know at this point, do we? We don't know in Genesis. We don't know how long Davros has been around.
No.
We know generally, or the idea that he was not a mutant, but that he was injured in some artillery or whatever, and he designed his own life support system, which then became the basis for the Dalek. But we don't know. That could have happened 300-400 years prior to Genesis taking place. So Davros has seen potentially hundreds of years of war develop up to that point where the Doctor turns up. So he probably does genuinely think, if I can do what I have to do and end this war, even if it means the total elimination of one species on this planet, then I will do that, and feel that he is absolutely right. He is doing the right thing. The fact it's us on the outside looking in that can see that in this brutal landscape, he's actually just as bad as everybody. And the Thals that we've always been brought up to see as the good guys, the peaceful people, the pacifists turned brave warriors against the Daleks, they're actually the bad guys as well for a large part.
Yeah, they are really sadistic, aren't they?
It's a great point. It's a great point. And that's what war has done. I'm always fascinated by the fact that Davros thinks taking the humanoid form of a Khalid and turning it into a green, squishy, blobby, yicky thing is the future. I just think, hang on a minute, that's a bit weird, isn't it? You freak. So they go 24.
No, they were mutating. So what is he's tailored that mutation
through
or
genetics,
accelerated it or something like that, isn't it? He's accelerated to see
find the
what
ultimate
they
form.
would eventually come in.
to find it, and it's such a shame that it was
easy
green.
to say to work on clams first and then do that.
But that's what I'm saying about this. Everything is thought out. Everything has a reason. So in those caves are Davros's failed experiments. So they could be anything, just flush down the loo, as it were, really, aren't they? To go and live in a blooming cave. It's far. I like this point here from Sudeiko24. He valued them as loyalists, i.e. the elite and everything like that. He had no pity for those he saw as traitors just for disagreeing with him. How 21st century is that, though, everybody?
Yeah.
Is this where we could be going? What are you saying, Kirsty?
Scarily so.
Yeah. And this one from Spielgab von Sparta. In the end, Davros' appealing to pity seemed to be out of character to me. Protecting the scientists because they're useful was much more convincing. That's a fair point.
I think though it's self-preservation at the end, isn't it?
Yeah.
That whole have pity. It's like I've got no other way of stopping these creatures from exterminating me. I'm just going to try and get pity out of them, even though I've recently engineered it out of them.
Yeah.
So there's probably an element of balls. Should I have done that?
Yeah.
Hoist on your own card now, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does make me laugh though at the end of that with the total destruct button, and it's labelled. It's like something out of Batman. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Good morning to the Timescales, who's joining us from California. Nice to see you. Thanks for tuning in, mate. And we've got here from Cybermutt Strikes, Davros is a tragic character. There's a moment where you think Tom may have been able to turn him in their little chat. Now, this is actually really good science fiction stuff, this, because they are having this famous chat where Davros has said to him, let's talk as men of science. And they're there sitting there, aren't they? Having just tortured the Doctor's friends, or threatened to torture them, and he's got part one of the set of adventures that we are all craving. It's a real wonderful scene here where the Doctor sits back down reluctantly, let's say, and they do start to talk about this, and he gives them that fantastic element, that whole thing. But this performance between these two actors is just television gold. This is a masterclass in a sense of how to do a two-hander. Do you not think?
Mm-hmm.
I think often Tom is much better when he's got a villain that's really straight to play against. I think he raises his game sometimes. I think they work beautifully together.
It's the content as well, isn't it? This part of the script, it's like what you're saying there. The Doctor nearly manages to convince Davros, and could that have happened a bit more? I'm not. I know where you're coming from that, because it's the whole good thing, isn't it? Will Luke manage to turn Darth Vader?
Yeah,
in that sense as well. But Davros is so obsessed, so he's listening to this prisoner who happens to be a scientist. Do you guys think there could have been an element there where Davros may have considered? Because the Doctor then goes and gives him one of the most frightening ideas in history.
Now, there's no way the Doctor changed Davros' mind. No way at all.
No.
I think
it was that
I think maybe before Davros had developed the Daleks, he might have stood a chance, maybe 100 years previous. And that's a bad one on the Time Lords, really, if they'd thought that through. It's like, well, let's not drop the Doctor there just as Davros has made this fantastic creature in his own image. Let's do it 100 years before he's even thought of it. The Doctor might stand a better chance. But no, we are where we are. But that is just, it's fully rounded characters. It's not just delivering some lines that somebody's written. They are fully rounded characters. You can fully believe that Davros has been there for a long time, and he fully believes in what he's doing. And the Doctor really believes in stopping him. And it's unbelievable TV.
I think it's that progression, really, from I need to create a travel machine for the form that our race will eventually evolve into, to I can use this machine to win the war for us, to with this machine we can overcome the universe. And it's not just on this planet. We can spread throughout eternity, basically. And it's that sort of logical progression that is scientific, really terrifying, but methodical, and going from one step to taking it ultimately way too far.
It's a good definition of mission creep, isn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I think he hears his joy at knowing the Daleks are still around in the future, and then having the idea that if you tell me when they get beaten, I can engineer into them so they don't. So it kind of just reinforces, what I'm doing is fantastic, because what I do lives on.
And
it's just the same. The Doctor didn't mention. It's just the same. The Doctor never mentioned, and you're not around at any point, Davros. Think on and look sharp. Poor Roughton is saying so much stands out in this classic. Atmospheric start, brutal and stark in places, gorgeous incidental music, acting from everyone is spot on, tension is there, pace is perfect, and sporadic humor too. And Just Jordan is telling us, I think the journey they all go on is so enthralling. The scientists believe in what they're doing and then realize it's gone too far. Unlike a scientist in some cases, the question in science of where you draw the line, it totally is, isn't it? It really is. And that's the thing about science. And I think it's brought out in Genesis of the Daleks here as well, because scientists in science fiction especially, do get very involved to the point where nothing else around them matters. And Davros, that's why I always say Davros, Mr. T. Davis, is one of the best classic, iconic science fiction villains ever, because he's absolutely in that mold.
He's trapped in a bunker and immersed in the environment, isn't he? So,
yeah.
Yeah, to say he doesn't get out much is an understatement, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah, I don't know. What were you going to say, Ian?
You just don't see. You don't. I don't want to mention He of Three Letters too much because it's about Genesis of the Daleks, isn't it? But it shows a fundamental lack of understanding about Doctor Who history and the character and the story. If your interpretation of Davros is an evil person in a wheelchair, because he isn't an evil person in a wheelchair. It's all there for a purpose. It's a fully rounded character with a complete backstory, and the person who I'm not naming just sees it as, oh, it's a bad person in a wheelchair. I can't do that. It shows such a simplistic view that just highlights that you miss all the points that are relevant about the character. He's so much more than that, and it's not a bloody wheelchair either. Otherwise Nyder would be pushing him around, wouldn't he?
Yeah, and yes, it's all explained in this beautiful story. Everything is there, and you get. Well, it's a shame we are where we are because you get over it very quickly. Go on, Badria. Thanks, Glenn.
We don't know his backstory,
and that's great.
It's not really gone into in massive detail. Obviously, the Big Finish audios have done that, but you get a sense of where he's come from, and the fact that he's in this half Dalek skirt, and it's mentioned that it's a life support system for him. You don't need to have seen him be injured and go through all that because you understand the character. That's all you need. You don't need to keep going back and we've got to show everyone everything that ever happened. Just put the details in dialogue, and we can place the character. We know his motivation. We get it. Move on and tell a really good story instead.
But you're absolutely right. That was the beauty of Doctor Who back then, and also storytelling back then. Of course, you didn't need this back exhibition. You don't need a back. Here is Davros, and we just accept him the moment he trundles through, because you see the Dalek base. You get it. And when it comes out that this is the creator of the Daleks, you get it. You don't need anything else because you're also. I mean, as I say, from my initial experience, I knew that this man was in a life support system. I knew something was going on because he had all these wires and stuff around. Got on with it, and I'm 5. It wasn't relevant. This was the creator of the Daleks. That was what was more important to me. And the fact is, he was bloody scary, and always worried about how the Doctor was going to deal with this one. But he did it beautifully. Absolutely fantastic. Dalek, I Love You is saying here, the Doctor and Davros together. What a great combination. 2 great actors giving their all and nailing it. And it makes it for the characters. I don't know if any of you have seen that behind the sofa for Genesis of the Daleks, where Janet Fielding actually mentions this in a sense, because she says, isn't it interesting that from this episode, I'm paraphrasing her, from these episodes, Davros's continuity is based upon those first moments with Tom Baker's Doctors for the rest of the series. Yeah. That shows you how good those 2 actors were, because if that hadn't worked...
What's really fascinating about that scene is they're not even eye to eye. They're sat next to each other and both facing the camera. So they're not playing off each other's reactions or anything like that. They're not, one-on-one in the traditional sense. It's just done in dialogue, really. And it's absolutely mesmerizing.
Oh, and all credit for them. This is 1975 we're talking about here. Filmed in 74 for 1975. This is, again, as I say, this was the beginning of the BBC Golden Age for Saturday nights, wasn't it, really? This is where it was starting to kick in. And as we said in our Tom Baker shows, Tom was heralding that, but so were his monsters. I mean, Davros became the icon he is today. Somebody mentioned in the chat about the Blackpool exhibition. I was terrified of going anywhere near the Davros exhibition. Absolutely terrified. Basically had to be pushed there by my dad. Go and have a look at it. It was fantastic. I wanted to say here, look at this. Says, coming from Germany, I only came to know Doctor Who in 2006 with New Who, but I've watched each and every classic episode since, even the reconstructions. I'm going to give you a big applause there.
Well done, yeah, fantastic.
Lovely to see you, and welcome. Yeah, welcome to the bigger picture, because there's so much in those 26 original years for you to find out if you haven't done already, and we'll help you. Join us. Don't forget to subscribe. And this little season here, We Love Davros, is all about that as well. So hopefully we can help you to get to know all the good stuff as well. 26 beautiful years of proper BBC television.
Proper.
Yeah. And this story, Genesis of the Daleks, is just one. Garbage is telling us the actors and the writers are out there. They just aren't allowed to work in the current industry. That is possible. In fact, I know it's true because I've got friends on the dole myself. Oh, here's a line. Now, okay, let's talk about this. Whatever I've done for you in the past, I've more than made up for. So that's obviously the Doctor talking to the Time Lords. Now, this is the other thing about this story, isn't it, guys? The lines, the iconic lines that some of us, being very sad, have managed to repeat over many, many conventions over the years, haven't we? Come on, I'm not the only one. Own up. I mean, Paul's got one there. Look at that.
Yeah, what no tea. Fantastic. That's one of the funnier bits, I have to say. But,
and this one. Yes, I would do it.
Maniac, mainly. And the way he doesn't just say it, does he? He doesn't just say it. He actually brings his finger and thumb together and really, yes, I would do it.
Smashes the vial, yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah.
That scene is the other thing on that behind the sofa. Did you notice everybody watching it perfectly quiet as they take in the performance of these two actors in that scene? Can you see them? And they are so engaged. Yes. All of them watch. I loved watching that behind the sofa where they are looking at that because they're all gripped. And these are people that wouldn't necessarily watch Doctor Who. They may have been in it.
Yeah.
But they're not there. And here they are to be paid to watch it. But I love the fact that Sarah Sutton, Janet Fielding, Louise Jameson, Tom himself, Philip Hinchcliffe, and Elizabeth Sladen's daughter's there. And they're all like this.
But they understand acting.
Yeah, but it's not that. It's the fact that the story has grabbed them at this point to be able to say, this is an important moment. So I think they become fans for a little bit there, don't they? Because they're going... Yeah. I think that's a wonderful thing there. Oh.
It's interesting you mentioned the line about all the things I've done in the past I've more than made up for. Does that now prove the Chibnall division nonsense? Just throwing it out there.
Let's not talk about that.
The third Doctor being been exiled to Earth and being admitted for the Time Lord said we, for goodness sake.
This is a happy show.
But
nice try.
Yeah. I'm sticking up for it. I hate it, but I'm sticking up for it.
This is the happy show. We're not talking about any of the current crap. We're talking about proper Doctor Who here with Genesis of the Daleks. Thank you for watching. You are watching Who's Views Reviews. Genesis of the Daleks. This is the start of our We Love Davros season. Oh, very exciting it is too. What are your opinions on Genesis of the Daleks? Keep your comments coming through. Thank you so much for joining us for this particular show. Loads of comments coming through. Peter is telling to us here, Albert Steptoe in a bath chair. If you don't know who Albert Steptoe is, you're going to have to Google that. Steptoe and Son. That's an interesting point, actually. We might have to remember that for next week. And Spielkauer.
Bramble for Davros. That's a new heading now.
Bless him. There wouldn't be much makeup required. Oh, sorry. He's not only going so far to eliminate one species, but the Carlids as well. Now, this is a great point because this is, again, another point about Genesis where Davros' character takes that twist. And the Doctor points this out beautifully, doesn't he? You know, rather than have his experiments stopped, he helped you to destroy his own race.
Well, the bit where he meets the Khaled kind of government, and they give him a time limit to shut everything down. His reaction to that's fantastic, and then they kind of begrudged, okay, I'll do that, but I'll sort you out, you know, and it's wonderfully done, you know.
It almost gives the idea that he's thinking about it, doesn't it? And you know, it's not. It will be difficult, but it will be done. And, you know, brilliant. Yeah.
So here's a point, right? So the Doctor goes to the Khalid government, and then they go to shut down his experiments, and then Davros goes over to the Thals to give him the formula to melt the dome. Spoiler alert, sorry. But does then the Doctor not become responsible for the extermination of the Khalid race? Because would Davros have given the formula to the Thals if the Khalids weren't going to stop his experiments? Therefore, the Doctor is guilty of genocide. I rest my case.
That's
That's why we have Child of a Time Lord, Phil.
Well, this is the whole point, isn't it? This is where, again, you could say this is the hypocrisy. As fans, we can talk about this because we are the geeks we are. This is the hypocrisy of the apparently non-intervention ruled Time Lords. Because here they are, blatantly interfering. They're sending their key man, even though nobody would admit that he is the key man, back in time to alter the Daleks program history or to get rid of them. I mean, the Doctor himself says in the famous scene that we're bound to come to, there's only one option open to me, the genocide, right?
Yeah.
But this is, I mean, this, you're right, Phil, in a sense, because the Doctor just being there has altered history already. The fact he's got his two companions with has altered the course of the Daleks' history already. It's an interesting debate to have on how, you know. But yes, it's right, because would Davros have gone to the Thals if the Doctor's presence hadn't been there? Would they have found another way? Would there have been a massive war between the Daleks and the Thals? What would have happened to it? It's all those parallel lines coming off here, isn't it? But yes, you can say that this is down to the Time Lords sending the Doctor in the first place.
But because we've seen Planet of the Daleks, we know Thals survive. So
yeah.
I wonder where they are today.
Daleks survive because they're in Dalek casings, but
yeah.
I remember reading somewhere, weren't the Thals going to be in Remembrance of the Daleks at one point?
Oh, that rings a vague bell. There was going to be some sort of reference or something, wasn't there? And it got too much. But Phil, you're onto something onto that. I mean, it is something to think about there. And when you're watching it, you can't help but think about something like that, can you? Because from the moment that they're found and then introduced to Nyder and Raven, that's it. They're embroiled. They are part of that timeline then.
But the war's kind of pootling on, and Davros is doing all these experiments and stuff. And it's not until they want to shut down the experiments that suddenly Davros has to accelerate everything. You know, maybe he'd have carried on working and, you know, he'd given the Daleks 2 arms or whatever. We don't know. But, you know, because they want to shut him down, that's when he's like, right, I've got to wipe out my entire race.
Or maybe we thought the Daleks don't work. Let's go back to the clams and do that.
Remembrance of the clams, revelation of the clams. Life could have been so much better.
Yeah.
Clam invasion of Earth.
Remembrance of the clams sounds good.
It's not the same.
Yes, right, yeah.
It's a great point. I like this. We'll see if the chat is saying anything about this in a minute. I've given them a couple of minutes to come to this, but it's a great thing because, as I say there, the resistance is slightly there. The scientists are scared out of their wits, aren't they? Because they are being dictated to. Let's face it. This is very, very akin to those people we knew in WWII. So it is there. So they are terrified. It's interesting to see that the Doctor, however, his presence there escalated their rebellion. You know, because he sort of nudges it on a little bit, you know, and Ronson especially. Oh, that poor man, that poor character of Ronson. I mean, he doesn't get very far, does he? But they're suspicious of him already, though. Let's face it, he's being watched.
Can we give James Garbutt a shout out for his performance of Ronson? He's superb.
Yes, go ahead. Please do give him a shout out. Go on.
Yeah, James Garbutt, he was actually in it roughly at the same sort of time, and when the book comes in as well with James Brolin. So he's a fantastic actor, and he really plays it really well. And you really feel for him when he gets exterminated in episode 4, I think it is.
It's again his performance. He's terrified, isn't he?
Yeah, and it's really straight, believable. Yeah,
but it is. But I love the fact that through that performance, the guy's basically physically shaking all the way through this. He's absolutely aware that he's in trouble, that something's going on. He just can't. He's not that. I'm not saying he's stupid, but he's not putting the pieces together as he should do. You know. And he's absolutely terrified. And that bit where Davros just turns on him with Nyder and looks at him, he should have known then. I would have been off to the Thals within seconds of that. I'm just going to the loo and they would never see me again. Do you know what I mean? But he knows at that point, but that character is staying there because he's got to do something. And again, just an amazing performance, lifted off the page with such style.
And then you've got Tom Johnson as well in there, who's fabulous too. In a small part. Yeah.
What do you like about him?
Phil's got me thinking now as well.
Oh God, what's he got you thinking of?
No, about the whole, did the Doctor cause the destruction? The only thing I can think of in the Doctor's defense would be that ultimately the Daleks turned on Davros and they would have wiped out the Khaleds anyway, because they just weren't like them. They killed everybody because they weren't like them. So I think the Daleks would have unleashed on the Khaleds anyway. That's what they're supposed to do, Ian, isn't it? Everything is inferior to them. Zap it. So the end result was the Khaleds get wiped out. It was just the Doctor being there brought that about in a different way. But it's a fascinating idea. Yeah, that I'd never thought of that before. It's but sorry, Paul, I cut in here.
No, it's fine. It's a bit really, to be honest. The Valiard said that in Child of Time Lord. The Doctor tends to be there. He causes more trouble. So maybe that was the case. You know.
George is telling us Terry Nation actually wrote a backstory.
So maybe the Time Lord was afterwards.
Go on.
So I was just thinking of that Time Lord at the end, watching it all happen, and then just going, "Oh shit, that didn't work out." We brought this all forward.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. George is saying to us here, Terry Nation wrote a backstory for Davros in one of the 1970s Dalek annuals. He did. Yes. Injured in a lab explosion and kept himself alive way past his lifespan via his life support chair to continue. Yeah, because he must be over 1,000 by the time we get to Revelation. He must be. He's also Digby's also saying here, is Davros a prisoner of the logic of his own belief in an inevitability of conflict? So security can only be based on domination on those around them. I'm getting a headache now, everybody. Ooh, that's the one thing about Who viewers. They are deep, aren't they? They are clever little so-and-sos, aren't they? Clever little thals. They really are.
But it's that means that story for backstory for Davros is canon because Terry Nation, who invented the character, did it.
Oh, don't you start!
In Destiny of the Daleks, you have the Mavellans bring Davros up on the screen, which is also written by Terry Nation, and says Davros, mutant humanoid. So he's now a mutant. He's not a. So it's which way do you take it, really? Because it's all Terry Nation.
Well, yeah, I mean, if we can talk more about that next week in our We Love Davros slot. Don't forget, write it down, somebody, and we'll talk about that. He's purposely doing it for clout, says Peter, when talking about Davros there. And Digby is saying, I wonder, do later Daleks find other copies of the recording of the Dr. Davros interview? We see one copy destroyed, but where were the others? We know the Khaleds bugged their own people. Well, they only recorded the one, because if you remember after that, Digby, the Doctor's released and they never get to go back to do the rest of it.
I think there might have been some Khaled fan recording it just off camera.
Well, I think it was that where they actually got rid of all the missing episodes we have today. I think it was during that incident there on Skaro. I think that was all.
Yeah, but that was Marco Polo that got destroyed. Is that what you think?
Didn't they have to make additional copies for overseas broadcasts of other parts of Skaro though?
Possibly, yeah.
So maybe those are just going around still.
I think some Khaleds are rebuilding it from telesnaps, though. So
there's an animation of it as well. Thank you.
Yeah, it's not very good though.
I'm just surprised it didn't back up.
It's in a magazine with Katie Manning. Atom is saying to us here, to have such a character debate the logic of morality with Tom Baker's Doctor was such a great way to show the difference between just because you can do a thing, should you? It's a commentary for science. This was when the messages that were coming through Doctor Who, if to use the term that we're all talking about now, were actually common sense, because it didn't preach at you in any way, but it did show you a sort of wrong and right without any sort of other issue coming into it. You, as a kid, you were able to look at this, and certainly when the Target novel came out and the vinyl came out, you were able to see, hang on a minute, and you were able to come to your own conclusion as a kid, weren't you? To be able to say, oh, I get that, and that's naughty. That's not the right way to do things. There was a morality, I think we used to call it. Do you remember?
It's multi-layered. There's things for everybody in it. You know, you don't have to. If you're a kid and you're just enjoying the Daleks, that's great. But if an adult, you can pick up all the subtleties as well.
Absolutely. Thanks, Glenn. Nice to see you, Glenn. Make sure you tune back with us next week for the We Love Davros debate show that we're going to be doing there, because that's going to be a great one where we're talking a lot more about that. But yes, let's have a look what else we got here. Atom is also saying Davros was also the first time we got to realize the roots of the Daleks and their once humanoid form, the Khalids and the Thals, which made for a great story for the future. Well, that's what we're saying. This is the one, actually, if you like, where nothing else was the same again. Every other story since then has featured our Davros and the Daleks, but it's all built from that, isn't it? You know,
I kind of agree with what Bedweir, I think, said earlier about. I think actually having just one appearance of Davros would have been enough. As much as I like subsequent stories, I think this is the definitive Davros, and could have been easily left as it was and left it there in one story, I think.
Oh, totally. I mean, that's why he's exterminated at the end, isn't it, Ian? That's why he's killed off. Yeah. But you know what? The reaction to Davros was intense, not just from the small amount of people as we knew fandom back then that was coming through, but the public seemed to like this and this whole story, and so did, of course, the production team on this. So when the new lot came through, and Terry Nation, as we know, thought, oh, there's a great character there, because he is I'm going to misquote him here, but he was saying that this gave the Daleks a different edge, because the Daleks were just screaming continually at the Doctor, where here you have a humanoid character coming in who can do other things because he's emotive. Yeah, I can see the beauty of that, absolutely. So I can understand why he pops up for the rest of the time.
But it's Terry Nation doing his ultimate balls up, isn't it, really? Because you go right back to 1963 when they did the Daleks and they killed them all off, and that was the end of them. And then it was, oh, bugger, these are popular, we're going to bring them back. And then he did the damn same thing with Davros. You know, he's just killed him off, damn, 1979, got to bring him back.
Yeah.
It's like, never really learned.
I can probably recite the whole of Genesis right now, Sister Deco. Yes, I think most of us can. Not just because we've watched it in continual forms, but because of the vinyl, because of the Target book, a whole generation. I mean, I think we all know the scripts right off, don't we? A certain age group.
Yeah,
definitely. Yep.
Got the script book somewhere.
Oh yeah, the script book.
You don't need it, Bedweir. You don't need it. You do it.
No, it's all in our head. Harry Sullivan.
It's all in there.
Harry Sullivan and Sarah Jane Smith, Atom says, both survived war-torn Skaro. Just think about that. Harry deserves a bit more fanfare given his role there. So let's talk about the regulars now and their performance and the way that they move it. Bearing in mind, again, first season between Tom, Liz, and Ian Martyr, who's thrown in there as well. They are magic in this, aren't they? This whole season is a joy, but this particular story, they are magic in.
Yeah.
I think Harry's great in this one, particularly because
I agree.
Yeah, my memories of him are as kind of a bit of a kind of very British, kind of almost kind of buffoony kind of character in a way. But in this, he's the super brave one. He's the hero. I mean, he just casually, spoiler alert, defuses that mine underneath the Doctor's foot. And he's like, and the Doctor's like, go away. And he's like, no, I'm going to sort it out. You know, you can't do it on your own. And then equally, he does put his foot in a giant clam later. But, you know, there's highs and there's lows. But I think he comes across super heroic in this one.
It also proves a bit of a point, though, that people criticise Doctor Who for the companions not being very strong. And there's a balance here in this because Ian puts his foot in it as Harry, and that's something that female companions often do. But Sarah is really strong in this. Her idea to lead the party up the scaffolding and off at the top of the dome and out the top of the dome is fantastic. Shows lots of balls, don't you think?
Oh, totally.
Absolutely.
And there's that lovely line where the Doctor and Harry are getting the feedback of a newly arrived girl prisoner who's caused the Thals quite a lot of trouble. And that lovely line from Harry, that'll be her.
Yeah.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. And it sums up Sarah Jane Smith, that'll be her. Isn't that gorgeous, everyone?
Yeah.
You know? But you're right. Go on, Kirsty.
Sorry, I love as well when she just stops the Doctor and goes, just had a thought, what if there's like something waiting for us? And he's like, oh well, Harry'll see it first then, just go for it. Yeah, I love that.
Don't tell Harry.
Yeah, it is great. It is great. I mean, there's so many lovely moments between these three here, isn't it? I mean, we've said this before about these three. It's their first year working together. Really their last year, the three of them working together as well, but they're enjoying each other's companies so much. It comes through in the characters, doesn't it? And the fact that the lines are just superb as well between them all. I mean, this is a magical period, and Genesis of the Daleks, there's so much going on. I want to talk about what Phil was saying there about Ian's performance as Harry. When I was watching it yesterday for this show, I noticed Ian's performance more because he's considered and Harry's considered. And there's that lovely dialogue, and we're going to have to talk about this, that lovely speech between, that do I have the right, where Sarah is involved more with the Doctor, and Harry stroke Ian is just there respecting this relationship so much. He's there looking at the two of them here because he's only just come into this relationship, and he's there letting Sarah deal with this very critical moment in the Doctor's life. It's just beautiful performance, that whole thing, and it just shows you the respect the three of them have there and how the characters work together. Do you not think?
They've got a real chemistry together, definitely, and there's some lovely moments at that bit where they go to the Khaled scanner, and they get scanned through it, and they detect the time ring, and then the Doctor gets punched in the stomach, and they take the time ring off him, and Harry says, "Don't let them know it's important. It's just we'll get it back. It's great. Camaraderie in it, lovely."
Yeah. I like this one here. That's tiny what you've got there, Paul. Darren is saying to us, "Hi, Darren. No tea, Harry," is one of my favorite lines. Simple words, but again, it's Tom's delivery that emphasizes the mood of the situation. And it's like code as well, isn't it, Darren? Do you get that feeling? I always did. It's the code there to say to Harry, this is serious.
Yeah.
Because Harry picks up on this. And then they start to be a little bit more compliant, don't they?
Well, the Khalids have no sense of humor, do they?
No. I don't think anybody does in this show, apart from the Doctor. They are all very, very well. Just Jordan, he basically eliminates anything he sees as a threat. That's in to Davros there. And George is saying, I think the more than made up for line was suggested by Maloney, as he also directed War Games and linked it to the Exile. Ah, okay. Yeah. That's a nice point. Yeah, that could be that. All right. So don't forget, as part of reviews here on Who's Views, we do ask you towards the end of the show for scores on the TARDIS doors. So start thinking about that now, because we ask you to mark the episode or the story out of 10. So start thinking about that. We're going to come towards the end of the show, so you've got a bit of time there. Genocide requires intent, really, says Sadeko.
Interesting philosophical point.
It is, isn't it?
Quite deep, this show, isn't it? It's the whole of the level.
Yeah.
You see, we don't just have any old fan on this watching this show here. We've got the quality of fans coming onto Who Views. They keep us going, don't they? As this one, the Doctor gets the timing at the end, says. I love that. Glenn is asking, do you think this story should have been the end of Davros? I think a couple of them said that. Do you think Davros being exterminated by his own creation was the perfect send-off for him? Yes. I mean, had that been the end, I think we'd be very satisfied. Personally, I'm thinking, I'm glad he wasn't really, though, because he's such a beautiful character. And
I do like his later appearances. I do like his later appearances, but there's always some way they've got to bring him back, because essentially he dies at the end of most of the stories he appears in. There's this way to bring him back, and he's kind of slightly diminished at each time he comes back, because you get a bit over familiar. It's not special anymore.
Digby's saying to you here, Phil, that what you said there was a troubling question that's kept him awake at night over many, many years, I'm assuming here, Digby. Bless you. Do the Time Lords bring on the development of the Daleks by their attempt to stop them? It's obviously, when you look at the story, it's obviously they do. Well,
I'm going to put a helpline number up at the end of the episode, and you can all type it.
They never learned from the minions of Minos, did they, at all?
No, they didn't. No, they didn't. But that's a great twist there, isn't it? And as fans, we love all this stuff. We love looking at that. But yeah, they probably did. Because, as I say, the Doctor's presence there changed everything immediately. From the moment that the Time Lords intercepted the transmat, bang, there they are. Change. Good point, Phil.
Yeah.
Darren is saying here, the Doctor was the ideal candidate from the Time Lord's point of view. If it went wrong, they could deny any involvement and blame it. I always love that about the Doctor's relationship with the Time Lord. Who? Doctor Who? Oh, what? Again, bringing that lovely element onto the title. We've never heard of him. We're just off to have a cup of tea. In big hats. In the panopticon. Let's have a look, see what else the guys are saying here. All right, so let's get on to the big scene now. do I have the right scene? Now, this has to be not just one of the most important performances and scenes in Doctor Who history, but surely, why hasn't anybody realised it's one of the most perfect scenes in television, British television history? What do you guys think about this? Come on.
Well, I've already said it's like Claudius. I think that's.
I think we need to shout out the cliffhanger just before it, which is the mutant attacking the Doctor, which was nothing on the page, but Tom Baker elevated to.
That scene was just awful. I remember again. I mean, every cliffhanger for this particular story, it was just from this moment on. I had the feeling that something nasty was going to come out of that room. And it did. And it might just be in a bit of papier-mâché or plastic or whatever it was, but it was green and it was squidgy and it was biting the Doctor, and I didn't like it.
It looks a bit like giblets at the Christmas turkey, doesn't it? A little bit.
A bit like school dinners at the time. Do you remember? You're like, on a Monday, you go back after Genesis of the Daleks going, oh, it's a Dalek. But yeah, you're right. I mean, that was a great cliffhanger there, but the expectation that something was coming out of it.
But even after that scene, even after that cliffhanger, he's still debating, can I do this or not?
Mm. Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that scene in this day and age, guys? Let me know.
We're just going to sit here and mull over it.
Yeah, we're mulling it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is supposed to be a talk show, everybody. Come on.
But he does at the end. So at the very end, in the voiceover, as they're drifting off, he does kind of say, "Well, out of their evil comes some good," and it kind of justifies that even more. It kind of solidifies it for me a bit, because you do kind of think you've been sent there to do it, so crack on, son. Put them wires together.
When he's kind of almost thinking out loud, when he's talking about the dilemma he faces, he does say if he destroys the Daleks, people won't die, and it's the dilemma is incredible. It really is.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. As kids, though, this would have gone over a lot of our heads, and it's something that had more of an impact for me, really later on, as I'm growing up and listening to the vinyl, and then especially when the video came out, and you're watching that, and you think, "Oh my God, this is really," because at that point we all knew this was a massive scene. And it was an important scene. But to see it again, I remember the VHS presentation when I put that video in on a Monday night and watched this. And then that scene really hit me. So I must have been, in my 20s at that point, just thinking, this is perfect. This is absolutely summing up the Doctor as well as his travels in time and space. Does he have the right? Did he? I'm going to ask you, did he have the right at that particular point?
He should have done it. He should have done it.
It depends what's going through his mind, doesn't it? Because, I mean, you talk about the scene, but, at the ages that some of us were at the time, you probably don't buy into the full depth of it and the moral dilemma and everything. But you live with the pictures that you see as a result after it. The Doctor with those two wires, that picture was around for years before DVDs or videos came out to remind you of it. But if you look at in the actual character and the story, you don't know what the Doctor was thinking about. He's had so many encounters with the Daleks, none of which will happen. They'll be completely erased. And he's probably thinking as well, will it cause some kind of paradox? Because if he destroys the Daleks and stops all the domination that they're doing, will the Time Lords then decide to send him back in time? Because why are they doing that? Because there's no Daleks. And you get one of those paradox things, don't you? So he could be thinking that. And like has been said, right at the very end, he's talking about out of that evil will come something good. A lot of good comes from people uniting to fight a common enemy. So it's does one thing weigh up the other. Ultimately, it wasn't to wipe the Daleks out. The Time Lord gave him choices or affect their development so they were less aggressive species or something like that. In the end, he just claims he delayed them. But should he have done it? I'd probably err on the side of not, because I'd still want to have all those exciting Dalek stories.
I love that. That's brilliant. That's fantastic.
There is great level of thought there, because I think if it had been maybe Star Trek, then they probably would have photon torpedoed it and they would have destroyed it. And the mere fact that, there is that thought about it is quite powerful, I think. It's quite, quite mature for a kid show.
The thing about it is, though, even if he, at the stage where he left it, where the Dalek goes over the wires and they destroy some of the incubating room anyway, I mean, prior to just at that point when he was going to do it, the Davros already had about 12 Daleks already, and they were in control, so that he would have simply, as he said, delayed it. There was no... Davros already had lots of Daleks ready to take action, you know?
Yeah, because Nyder's horrified when he says 12.
Yeah.
You know...
20. It's a 20, is it 20?
20, I think.
I think it's 20, yeah. So 20.
Like, 20. Yeah, the way that Michael Wisher says 20, he emphasizes that in those old actory ways that they used to do at the theatre, you know. Oh, yes, absolutely gorgeous. I love it when he does that. But it is interesting, and it's what's possibly missing from any sort of TV today, isn't it? Where you've got that drama based around what is in fact a very, very simple scene, if you think about it, because all it is, it's Tom Baker holding two wires.
Yeah.
And the drama, the tension, the fear, the emotion that comes from this, it's incredibly powerful, Badria.
Yeah, but it's the discussion about a philosophical concept of, you know, going back to if you could see into the future and you knew that child was going to be evil.
Oh, beautiful.
And that's what, you know, eventually we saw in the Capaldi two-part I mentioned earlier. I don't think you do that now. It'd be one of those things that it would get cut because, one, people wouldn't really connect with it. They would just go, of course you should do it, and move on. And two, it slows the action up. Although it's the start, you know, it's the start of a new episode where it happens. So people, you know, nowadays it would be trimmed out because it's, I don't know, it's one of those things that there isn't enough time for. And these kinds of questions, particularly in Doctor Who, really, really should be answered because it makes you think, and it's really fascinating.
Yeah,
I think it was lucky for the Doctor that Garman stepped in when he did and told him what they were going to do.
That did help.
Yeah,
that did help him. Yeah.
But then when he realizes it's all going awry and things are getting out of hand, he goes back and sets it all up again. And
gets a raincoat as well.
Well, his coat's fantastic. That's a great look, isn't it? That lovely brown overcoat.
Yeah, really. And even Sarah gets a change of clothes in this as well at this particular point, which is always fabulous, I think, for Liz. But yeah, I understand what you're saying, Badria. I just think it's a shame that television, or the people that produce television now, will work that way, because this is taking the drama out of it. Because this is pure drama. This is proper drama, and they're saying all these things. Let's keep it with Doctor Who. Doctor Who's a drama. It's not really, is it? It's just bang and whistles. It's when you go back to look at these episodes from proper Doctor Who that you get the drama, because you get the characters with a dilemma. And here we have our lead with the biggest dilemma that he's probably had in his entire life, right up to that point. And even since, he's never had quite the decision on that since, has he?
Not really. No.
I think the drama in this sense has a chance to breathe, doesn't it? It's not too rushed. It's a chance to relax. 6 episodes, it can breathe and not be so fast-paced.
Yeah, I'm usually the first to sort of criticize 6-parters for being too long. But Genesis is one of those rarities that wouldn't benefit from being trimmed down to 4 episodes, because you need that space. You need scenes like this to play out properly.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the 6-parters from the original series either, because it tends to be a 4-parter with a 2-parter on. I mean, look at the Invasion of Time. That's just nonsense in that sense of the format. You could have trimmed it down a little bit, but they had those many weeks and they had to fill it up. But yeah, this is the highlight of how to do those old-fashioned 6 half-hour episodes. This is how you do it properly. Beginning, middle, end, lots of plot and lots of action in it as well as these high drama. I'm going to call this particular scene that we're talking about the Do I Have the Right scene one of the most famous in Doctor Who history. It's high drama, and it's just pulled off brilliantly. Quiet studio, 2 performances. No disrespect to Ian, but he is just there. His performance is basically allowing the Doctor and Sarah, Tom and Liz, to go through the motions here. Such a powerful scene. It's I think it's a scene that should be shown to up and coming actors on how to do it. Personally,
Yeah,
that's one of those scenes.
You've got the context that Sarah's already met the Daleks, whereas Harry doesn't really have that background at that point anyway. So yeah. Well,
it's true, but even at this point, Harry is basically, he's aware of what is going on. He's in there, isn't he? He's absolutely in there with them, and it's brilliant that he's doing that. Excuse me.
Of course, Harry's a medical doctor of some sort, so who knows what sort of stuff he might have seen. Okay, Unit is a bit less on the front line, should we say, but he might have had soldiers that have been blown up by Cybermen and had to deal with those, so
probably
you're planting that character, so he's gonna get it, but maybe the context of understanding the Daleks and their abilities, it works better with Sarah having that conversation.
What the scene shows, though, it shows Tom's fantastic gravitas as the Doctor as well.
Yeah. Oh, it does, doesn't it? It absolutely does. I mean, his performance there. I mean, this is essentially, he's had this and he's had the Ark in Space with that beautiful speech that we've spoken about before on the show. I mean, it's like Ian was saying there, no disrespect to his predecessors, but he's the Doctor at this point, and it's no wonder the public were going, crikey, look at this show. What's going on here? This is different, isn't it? Because you're not running round with a load of Daleks screaming at you here. Here, you've got a real roller coaster of emotion journey of a script. It's just incredible.
The thing about it is very different from the Pertwee era, but it's still Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Tom's
and it's magic how they do that.
Still the Doctor. He's still the Doctor.
Yeah, I mean, it's magic how they've done that. This is recognisable to the 11 series that has gone before it. Do you not think? It's wonderful how they've pulled that off very, very quickly. I like this comment from Paul. Sarah and Harry are surely one of the strongest companion combinations of all time. They have a wonderful friendship, and the three of them with Tom are just an absolute joy to watch. That's the other thing about this whole first series, because this is what you would now call an arc, isn't it? Yeah. Because they are. And yes, there is that whole thing that Sarah and Harry have that beautiful relationship. It's just incredible. It's the big brother and little sister role. Let's face it. And he's doing this whole thing about looking out for her, and he's very concerned for her, but he still has that whole thing of this bird's different. I don't have to worry that much about her because she can look after herself. To use his language. It's. I just love the way Marta nails it.
I think they have a brilliant relationship, though. I mean, right the way through. Sarah can say some things to Harry that in 2024. With everybody being so, mind you, it's a female saying it to a male, so it might still be appropriate. But, in Ark in Space, she says, she'll spit in his eye. I mean, but then in Revenge of the Cybermen, he's like trying to get the chains off her, and he goes, tibias are rather fetlocks like a cart horse, which is brilliant because it is that brother-sister bickering and banter that you would get.
There's a warmth to it, though, isn't there?
Yeah, completely. You he would stand in front of a bullet for Sarah, but there's no hint that he wants to shag her. There's none of that at all. It's just beautifully played down the line, and that entire scene that you're talking about with the wires. Yeah, he takes that respectful back position while they get on with it. They debate it, they discuss it, and everything else, and it's. You wouldn't get it today. They'd be too busy talking about
it. Program. Yeah, it's nice to have a program that people are not like ships.
Yeah.
I mean, do you as somebody that came to the show with the new series, Kirst, do you look at something like Genesis of the Daleks and understand where we're all coming from as slightly older people about the differences between proper Who, as I call it, and the reboot version?
Oh yeah, I am totally with you on that. You're right that people and there'd be accounts made and it would just be how we have it nowadays. It'd be Harry and Sarah shit instead of in life. You can have friends. I can have friends with male people, or you guys can have friends with female people, and there's platonic friendships. They can't have that in TV shows, especially sci-fi programs. I am totally with yous as I was saying to Paul earlier on, messaging, my favourite pill like males who give me all the advice on how to get more from the classic Who, because it's just better than New Who, and it's great opening my eyes to more.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. It's a great point though, and it's always good to hear where, you know, when the youngsters that have come through with the reboot version go back and watch it. I know some of them criticize it for whatever reasons, but I get a little bit sort of defensive when they do criticize it, because I believe they've lost the magic, because they're looking for something that probably will never be there, i.e. a tone or resolving everything in 10 minutes or whatever it's going to be. And sometimes it concerns me that they can't see a story properly or a character. But I know more of them look at the older ones and get engrossed with it because they can look at stories. So it's quite it's a balance there, isn't there? Really, I think it really is.
I think I'm just built different compared to some of the young ones nowadays. That if you put both of them in front of me now, I'd pick classic Who.
Ooh,
Good for you.
Yeah.
Always controversy here on this show, isn't there?
Our work here is done. We were sent by the Time Lords.
Yes.
Oh, fantastic. What else we got? The chat is really busy this evening. Thank you so much for everybody for your comments. We've got Dalek, I love you, saying here, defo one of the best moments in Doctor Who ever. And good point, Bedouin, says Digby. The context is everything. It certainly is. And that's what is brilliant about the original Doctor, because they were so focused then about telling a story. That, you know, and the story is always key. Even the mutant, says Digby, out of the machine is dangerous. Yeah, and that again is built on later on, isn't it? Really, with some of them. What have we got here? Oh, I want to say hello to Matt, the Silent Y Music King. Hello, nice to see you. Thank you for joining us. We are going to be coming up very soon, everybody, 2 scores on the TARDIS doors. So I see some of the scores coming through now from you. Thank you. Keep them coming. Go Vidal is with us and saying, for those who saw it when it premiered, did the episode come to mind when you discussed historical events like World War II and the rise of Hitler and Stalin? Yes, absolutely. And I am sure that actually one of my teachers referred to this. Did anybody see Doctor Who on Saturday? I'm sure that was one of my teachers did that. Memory might be cheating. What about you guys? Did you ever see the similarities?
Not so much as a kid, but obviously as you become an adult, you definitely see them. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a bit different. I came into it even as a kid, knowing it was kind of the Daleks were who they were supposed to represent, and so yeah, it was a given.
He really goes for it in this one, Terry Nation, though. Really, he does definitely double down on this one, doesn't he? He absolutely does think, like, this is the comparison. This is it here. I don't know if any of you have seen these, but I've just wanted to put these up in case you haven't. These are some of the behind-the-scenes shots from the filming of Genesis of the Daleks, taken from so these are available on various fan websites. So thank you to everybody for putting these through. But I think these were absolutely gorgeous. So that one is a lovely one, I think. And then there's this one here as well, which is a rehearsal shot.
Yeah.
So poor old Michael Wisher had to wear that blooming mask for quite a long time. And there's that lovely story as well. At one point they left him, didn't they, to go off and have the lunch?
Yeah. I noticed Dennis Chinley's come dressed down to work there.
Yeah. Yeah. He's in his casual gear, and poor old Michael Wisher is all make-up. He must have got there really early before the rest of them did to do all that. But I thought they were lovely pictures, so I just wanted to share those with you as well.
The columns in the Khalid base look great in that, you know, from that angle, because they do actually carry on at the top.
Yeah.
That just looks fantastic.
GT,
Sorry?
Do you have any pictures of Stephen Yardley? But not mentioned Severin at all, who I think is fabulous in this as well.
Yeah, and we haven't mentioned the Muto element. I know they did in the chat, but we did. The Mutos are again amazing extra characters here, aren't they? I mean, obviously they're there to help with the plot.
Yeah,
because you know the Thals are enslaving certain people here, but it's quite a sad story. The whole Muto element, isn't it?
Yeah, and Stephen Yardley and Liz Sladen work well together as Severin and Sarah. That works really well, I think, in the story.
Yeah. Well, it certainly dispels. I mean, they've got that whole thing, isn't it, that sets up for us as viewers. Oh, you can't trust them. They're mutants. They're this, they're that. They're nasty. They're nasty and nasty. And then you meet Seren, and you think, ooh, no, they're not like that at all. These are just. But the whole story. I mean, it's a sad story, isn't it? In a science fiction sense. So these are. What do they call them? Relics. Oh, it was just it. Oh,
I love what the Mutos call the ordinary people, the norms.
Norms.
The norms. Yeah. Rock on Norman. That's what it is. Yeah.
I think though Peter Miles Nyder, when he explains what the Mutos are, and he says it and does that music in the background, just the way it comes across, it's so. I don't know what the word for it is, but it's just. Incredible, it's an scarred relics of ourselves, banished to the wastelands, and it's just so dispassionate and cold and uncaring, and it's really powerful piece of. I mean, the whole story isn't it? Really incredibly powerful piece of TV. This
and again, delivered beautifully.
JT, can you just put that picture back up?
Which one? Sorry.
The one of Severin. Because also in that shot is Harriet Philpin as Bethan.
That's right.
Often derided this show for not having strong female characters, but she's a proper strong, not afraid, taking action to bury the Daleks in, really good character.
Yeah. And she's the one that the Doctor entrusts, of course, with putting in the fighting force.
Yeah.
Will you do this? And he trusts her completely and utterly to do it. And by God, she goes and does it. And she's not going to quit. That lovely moment where it's even the Doctor who's down in the base, and she's not bothering. I'm blowing that. If he's not back in a certain time, it goes. That's it. Hard line, because it's war. Yeah. It's war. So you're right, Bedwi. I mean, it's always misrepresented, the original. Isn't it, the original series? It really, really is. We've got some great comments here coming up. Digby is saying here, Harry has the knack of winding Sarah up wonderfully. Again, it's the brother and sister thing. Pete goes on, one of my favorite. My ankles are not thick. She says such beautiful lines. It is. That is fantastic. Tony is saying to us, there's a bit of Tom on the Tube of Who, remembering Liz Sladen, and Tom gets choked up. It's very sad. It's a heartbreaking, isn't it? That's heartbreaking to see Tom like that, because that's not the Tom we know, is it?
No, it's not.
No.
And he cracks. That's the first time I think any of us have ever seen Tom crack.
Probably. Yeah.
Oh, it's just amazing. And Spielkab von Sparta, Baker's performance and deliverance of the dialogue and presenting this dilemma is impeccable, though. It convinced me about the stakes, although I've got my qualms with the dialogue. And yeah, that's fine. That's absolutely it. It's that's what Doctor Who's about as well. Jack, hello, Jack. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining us. Absolutely wonderful. Okay, the scores on the TARDIS doors, we are coming up to that. I'm just going to find, we've got some scores coming through there, so you'll have to bear with me as I get them all lined up, because the chat has been very busy this evening. You're all really going for it, so thank you for that. While we're all talking about that and getting all this sorted, oh, and there's Digby's there. Let's get that going. This is our We Love Davros season. This is the first part of this. I wonder what's coming up for you next. So next on our We Love Davros season, we've got our discussion show. That's going to be next weekend, and we want to know more about your favourite moments of Davros. We will be revealing who you voted to be the best Davros out of the 4 lead actors, which, as again, that's available on our community tab right now for you to vote for. We're going to be talking about Davrosgate. Yes, of course we are. That is coming in as part of our hashtag We Love Davros season. And the week after, we will be back to look at the time Colin Baker's Doctor met Davros in Revelation of the Daleks. So that's all coming up for you here on the channel. Don't forget, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please do. Ring that bell so you get notifications when we go live with any of our shows. We've got a lot of shows for you here on the channel. Thank you for coming in and supporting us with all of that. But right now, panel, are you ready? Because it is time.
Can I just, before we do this, I have an interesting fact for you.
Oh, go on then.
In this story, you may have
Yes.
noticed there are guns that the Thals have, the Thal soldiers, and the Doctor compares the futuristic weapon with the rifle in part 1. These weapons were used in Galaxy 4 by the Dravens. I'll get my coat.
And I think that particular weapon is in the Who Shot Museum in London.
There we go. Yeah.
There you go. I love the way the BBC would always bring those props out again and again and again and again and again, you know, except the certain icon. You never saw a Liberator bracelet in Doctor Who. But, well, that's another show. All right, then, so get ready, everybody. It's time for this. Yes, so if you're new to Who's Views Reviews, this is the element where we mark the story out of 10. So I'm going to start with Kirsty, our diversity hire. Kirsty, out of 10. How many marks out of 10 are you going to give Genesis of the Daleks, Kirst?
I'll take a 10, please, sir.
You're going to give it a 10. That's brilliant. Fantastic. We'll move on to third Doctor, Ian.
11. It's
Okay.
perfect. It has to be 10 out of 10. Has to be.
Brilliant. But what about you?
I mean, it's easily a 10. Can I give it extra points for the target novel, the audios, the VHS, the DVD? Like, all of them are 10s. So that's a lot of 10s.
That's a lot of 10s. Phil, what about you out of 10?
I was going to give it a 6, but I feel kind of ashamed of giving it a 10. Yeah, go 10.
And a 10. Brilliant. You've just been exterminated there by Third Doctor Ian. And go on then, Paul, what about you?
Well, look, it was no surprise after gushing about it being as good as I, Claudius. I give it a 10. And like Bedouin, if I give it more, I would. Great show. Fantastic. Best Doctor Who story ever.
And that is what I'm going to say about this as well. It's a full house from us on the panel. I'm giving it a 10 out of 10 on the scores on the TARDIS stores because this is one of my all-time favorites as well. It's iconic, it's science fiction, and this is the start of Davros' story, and that's why we love Davros. Let's get to the chat and see what the Who viewers are voting for. Darren, you are giving it 10 out of 10. Sudoku 24, 10 out of 10. This is cracking. Gore Vidal, 10 out of 10. Guess, can anyone see a pattern yet? Peter Harrington, 10. Tony is saying definitely 10. Lex Kane is saying 10 out of 10. What do you mean?
Can you work out an average?
I'm kidding.
Digby, 10. This is probably going to be the highest scoring show that we've had on Who's Views Reviews. Atom is saying 10. Epic and fantastic writing and characterization. Yeah, I'm totally going to agree with that. Raymond, we are still talking about it almost 50 years later. That makes me feel old. He's giving it a 10 out of 10. TARDIS Travels, 9 out of 10, maybe 10 out of 10. Oh, you're ruining up my scores. I was adding it all in my head. Alex is also saying
we can invite him to reconsider.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it's going to be a 10 from him. One of the best Fourth Doctor speeches, says Lex. Doug is also saying, in my mind, the do I have the right scene is when Tom really becomes the Doctor. How lovely. That's really, really nice, isn't it? That's great there. Let's have a look, see who else can come up, get some more scores in here, everybody. There's over 50 of you in the chat. What else have we got here? Oh, keep it coming. The chat is going really quickly with this. Have anybody got any more scores? Pop them in now before you can. This is why I have to keep up with everybody because there's so many chat. You've been fantastic. Glenn, thank you. 10 out of 10. I feel like I'm on Eurovision. Dalek, I love you. 10 out of 10. There's never been anything close since. Wow. What else we got? Where else we got? Just Jordan, have you given us a score? Jack, have you given us a score? Yes, he has. Jack, 10. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Well noted, Paul, says Digby. Spielcab is going 10 out of 10. Blue Planet, 10 out of 10. Just Jordan, thank you. 10 out of 10. I knew she wouldn't let me down on that one. George, very minor flaws. Don't stop it from being a 10. It's everything great Doctor Who and TV. Great TV should be. Peter's saying a big 10. Digby is saying a big 10. This is brilliant. Thank you, everybody, for this. Jack is also saying Genesis is the best of Doctor Who, but we haven't seen the next series with Gatwa yet. Stop that right now. Jack, he's naughty, isn't he? He's a little tinker. Paul is saying it's got to be a 10. It's my go-to when I need to remind myself what Doctor Who really is. And Data Debaser, hello, nice to see you. Love the carry-on influence there with Jim. Lovely. 10 out of 10. Tony is saying, I think we all agree it's a hit. Absolutely, it's a hit. And that's it. Brilliant. That's all I'm taking with the scores there, because I think we can all agree. Huge hit. Genesis of the Daleks, as was pointed out there, nearly 50 years old and stunning. Hasn't dated at all, in my opinion. And I think we've just proved that with this fantastic show. Oh, man. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed it, everybody on the panel.
It was fabulous. Thanks for letting me on.
Yeah.
Absolute pleasure.
Yep.
Oh, and look, thank you. We've had great numbers tonight. Thank you for joining us here on Whose Views Reviews, the start of our We Love Davros. A big appreciation of that classic science fiction character. Join us next weekend for our real big discussion show, which is where
He's
these
never
two...
going to win, Phil. He's never going to win.
Hope Goodison for a brighter tomorrow.
As I say, on the next show, We Love Davros, we want to know about why we love Davros on the next show, your favourite moments, your favourite actors. We will be looking at the result of our poll that is right now active on our community tab. We're going to be looking at some other aspects of Davros' history, why he's important to Doctor Who, and by God, we are sending one huge message to a certain showrunner. And that message, of course, is We Love Davros, hands off. Thank you to the Whotastic panel. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all that. I really, really enjoyed tonight. Thank you, everybody, for watching us. If you've just found us, please do subscribe. Thanks to Kirsty and for Garbage for all the work in the chat tonight. Great comments, everybody. We will see you next time for our We Love Davros season. Until then, say goodnight, panel.
Good night.
Good night, panel.
Bye-bye.